State of emergency. State of emergency. As a term of legality, society, morality, we are all in a state of emergency. President Francois Hollande declares this on his country this week, state of emergency. But in some ways, we're all in this state of emergency. Firstly, on behalf of the Stop the War Coalition, we send our sympathy and utter outrage to the people of Paris. We also send our sympathy to those in Beirut, Nigeria, Mali, Egypt, to those also in Syria, in Palestine, in Bahrain, in Yemen, in Iraq, and in Afghanistan as well. Of course, the Paris attacks just last week were a terrible mass murder on innocent civilians, and no one doubts that it was an appalling mass murder. But the responses to Paris has unleashed a response which it does not seek to understand what has prompted this attack, nor does it seek to analyze the causes of this attack. Instead, crude and juvenile and simplistic analysis uses this sort of ferocious response to sort of reduce foreign policies to a further war rhetoric. State of emergency has unleashed a most ferocious response using the law and abusing the law on its very principles upon which the law was founded, by creating more law and more law and more law, which is what this state of emergency has done. Of course, acts of terrorism which involve violence are to be condemned, and so too must we condemn the acts of state violence, that is, acts of state terrorism. State terrorism is a state of emergency. Those governments that wage war on other countries, those governments that wage wars in this country, on innocent people in this country, a state of emergency against our liberties. A spiral of hatred, fear, and vengeance takes place. This worldwide phenomenon is killing and maiming innocents of civilians all around the world each year. War generates horror. War generates terror. And the international stage is perpetuating this state of emergency. When does the world wake up? We've done this for over a decade. We've done this for centuries. Illegal wars define my lifetime, and I'm sure that they are defining your lifetime too. This week, the UN has had an open discussion on allowing the Syrian bombing permission. Allowing the Syrian bombing permission. When do we wake up? May I remind you, in Afghanistan, the war was allowed by the UN as well. What is legal and what is illegal anymore? This is what a state of emergency really is. In this Western democracy, liberal democracies have embraced the principles of permanent war. I have never lived a single moment in my lifetime without war. None of you have. We have always been at war. And bombing Syria will not stop ISIS. Bombing Syria does not stop this cycle of violence. Bombing Syria also doesn't stop the refugee epidemic that is happening right here today. 100 miles away in Calais, there are 6,000 people without a bed, without a shelter, without food, and nobody is waking up to this awful, awful crisis. And you don't need to have a master's in international relations to recognize this failed repetition of history. And by the way, you certainly won't have an MA in international relations for that matter, because you can't afford a master's in international relations. The government has completely slashed any sort of hope of affording anything. Look at the NHS, look at our social services, look at the welfare system. All of these sort of pillars of society are being destroyed. Our society is being destroyed. And as for what's happened this month in terms of talking about terror, I do want to raise the issue of apology, the word sorry. It is not for Muslims in the Western regions to reiterate a united condemnation. We must not feel obliged to do so, as if Islam has anything to do with the perpetrators of such atrocities. Via connotations, rhetorical assimilation, and linguistic capability, this perspective almost likens it to an apology. If anybody should be saying sorry, it's David Cameron. If anybody should be saying sorry, it's Barack Obama. Yes, united we stand, but we must also be united against mass hysteria and fear-mongering, which evidently will lead and has led to a marginalization and demonization of particular communities based on the grounds of color, of race and ethnicity and religion. Hate crime has soared. Attacks on civil liberties has soared in the name of security measures. Attacks to our civil liberties in the name of security measures. Comrades, we must challenge and fight for our rights. We must unite and fight for our rights. Security jeopardizing our civil liberties in the name of security must be challenged wildly. We have to fight for our humanity. And in all of this, the pillars of society is being completely destroyed. We are in a state of emergency. Our civil liberties, our rights are in states of emergency. And when we are in a state of emergency, we expose that there is an emergency of the state. Thank you.